Hello everyone and welcome to Celebrating Cinema. It's me, Sophie. You're listening to our series called Future Frames, which is a series where we celebrate emerging Dutch filmmakers whose frames we are excited to see more of and claim the screen. As hosts, we've each picked someone who would like to celebrate and speak with. In this edition, you'll hear from 5 filmmakers and their personal relationship to cinema. This will be recorded in English with the intention of an international audience, wherever you are, who can access the talent here in the Netherlands. For my pick, I have chosen writer and director Stefanie Kolk. Thank you for being here. Welcome. I'm excited to talk about your films today. You've already made some short films and you're working on your first feature film, right?
Yes, that's correct. Thanks for inviting me, by the way.
You're very welcome, yes. Before we jump into your works, I would like to start with a question that's more related to your love of film. I'm curious to know what your first memory of film is.
It's technically a series, actually.
All right.
But as a kid, my favorite book was Ronja Robersdochter. Ronja de Roversdochter.
Oh, right, yeah.
It's an Astrid Lindgren book, and there was a series, but it's also sometimes edited as a film.
Okay.
But it's like a 6-hour thing, so it's really long. You can really indulge. It's almost a bit like what we do now with series, where it's a bit longer, right?
Yeah.
I watched that a lot as a kid, so I really liked it. And actually, a lot of stuff that you watch as a kid hasn't really held up. Sometimes also kind of politically, or
yes, yeah.
But I feel, I really still love that film or series, if you will.
Yeah,
it's really sweet, and it ends in a kind of standoff between a daughter and her father, and it's like there's these big personalities, and it's just really genuine and sweet, and it's a really beautiful setting and questions it asks. I like it still.
Would you watch that on television or did you have it yourself?
That's a good question. I think at the time, VPRO Villa Achterwerk, it's a broadcast, it's a television station, or a broadcasting agency actually. And I think at the time it showed a lot of Swedish kids films. Yeah. Like My Life as a Dog and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think as a kid I watched a lot of those kind of films on Sunday.
So you watched a lot of film while you were little?
Yeah, not when I was tiny, I think.
Coming of age, maybe?
I come from a kind of sciencey nest. So my parents are both neuropsychologists and very sciencey, but actually my dad is a big film lover. And my mom thinks everything is too bleak. So like she just, whenever there's something a little bit bleak in a film, and I mean, European art house is pretty bleak last century. Yes. Sometimes annoyingly so, actually, I think. but like she would leave the room. But like my dad wouldn't really, so he would be watching Bergman or something. And I would, but I was kind of allowed or tolerated to stay up if I would watch alongside with him. So I did watch cool stuff at the time with him. But of course, I mean, I also just went to see The Lion King. And I remember when we got VHS, Aladdin on VHS, that I really enjoyed. So it's not like I watched highbrow stuff all the time, But
you did start watching it at an early age.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, although I didn't like everything, but I kind of liked the atmosphere of sitting next to my dad, who really, really, really enjoyed.
Yeah.
Like, is very vocal about it, and like it's nice when you experience somebody loving something so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that true. I definitely got. That feeling I got from him even when I was too small to understand Bergman.
I understand that, yeah. So would you say that film is still that for you? Like an experience to share with someone, to bond over?
Yeah, that's a really good question. With some people, definitely, yeah. And I still talk about film a lot with my boyfriend, who is also in film. He's more on the kind of curatorial on the other side, a bit like
right,
you,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And also with my dad, he had an accident a few years ago where he got a really big brain bleed, and he was in rehabilitation a lot. And he recovered like insanely well. Like he couldn't even look you in the eye, and he couldn't speak and couldn't walk anymore. And this was all pre-COVID. So if it was during the COVID time, he would not have survived because he was in intensive care for so long. So he was like a big drain, I think, on the system. But he survived, and he really, in his own way, has really thrived since then. Oh, now I've completely lost what I want. 1 sec.
If you guys still bond over films, I'm guessing if he was out for such a long
So
time.
that's one of the things that. So he's really shitty at some very like things that are kind of basic, like reading a clock, you know, just reading the time.
Right.
He has no clue.
Yeah.
He doesn't know what left and right is, and he can't, like, he loved cooking, and he can't do that anymore, unfortunately.
Oh.
But when you talk to him about science or about film, then you can, it's like he's exactly the person he always was.
That's so nice. Yeah. And would you say that that experience of film, of like experience it together, bonding over it, is there also something that you keep in mind while making your films?
I think in practice I do, because in the process of making a film, it's very long now. I just made a feature where I'm rounding that up right now. And I kind of lose myself in it a lot. And then I need people whose opinion and taste and vision I trust to sometimes just have a conversation with, and they'll say something, and I'll know if I agree or not.
Yeah.
Just to not lose myself, I do need that kind of community to be able to actually make and finish a film.
Yeah.
Like I can't do it by myself for sure.
Right.
And yeah.
So you're talking more about the production side now.
Yeah, but also writing. I let other people read my script a lot when I don't know what I'm doing anymore.
Fair enough.
And also, but I have a feeling I do that a bit more than some other filmmakers. I don't really know, but yeah, I also do it in the edits where I just, at some point, I need an opinion to kind of, when I hear somebody talk about film, I can have really strong feelings about that, you know?
I'm also wondering if you keep this in mind while making your films for the audience. Like, do you try to make your films into something that people can experience together?
Yeah, I do believe. Yeah, so even though I would say, like, in the Film Academy, I heard a lot of people were a bit like feeling that I probably was making films for myself because I was making stuff that not everybody understood.
Yeah.
But for me, on the inside, I really do believe in film as something that can connect people and can give maybe not exactly the same experience in everybody, but trigger a conversation. And also, yes, sometimes it does create a very specific feeling in very different people, that a feeling that's the same. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
Because some feelings can't, it sounds a bit wishy-washy, but some feelings, they're hard to describe in words. And I think that's maybe also because I come from a science background.
Yeah.
I find it really cool that cinema can do that, you know?
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah. This makes me think of something that you said in a different interview. You said that the more specific and personal and detailed you get, the more universal a film becomes for you.
Yeah, I don't actually know who I'm quoting there, but there's a filmmaker that said that I have been trying to look for. So if anybody hears this and know who said it,
let us know. Yeah,
please send me a message. I definitely feel that. Yeah.
Can you elaborate a bit on that maybe? Like how this translates to how you make your films?
Sometimes in a film, it's set in a very generic setting, right? Like they put it like in an unspecified time or something. Like it could be 70s, but it could also be today or something.
Yeah.
Or it's set in an ambiguous country or something. And for me, that's a matter of taste, I think. But it doesn't often work. Sometimes it does, but I just enjoy finding myself in a world I believe, which doesn't mean that it has to be a realistic world, but that somehow feels like I couldn't have made it up. And if it is composed of generic features, I just don't feel it. It just doesn't speak to me.
Yeah.
I have to feel this. This film is inviting me somewhere I haven't been, or it's somehow this filmmaker is taking me somewhere and they know where they're going and I don't. I like that feeling.
Yeah, I think that very much fits your films. I truly recognize it. The short films that you've made so far, they were all about very specific little moments in time, something where something very specific happened that, I wouldn't have thought of myself. They were so beautiful to watch. Like, you have such an interesting style. I would like to talk more about that.
Thank you.
Especially with your scientific background that you keep mentioning, because you studied biophysics before going into filmmaking, and you've said before in other interviews as well that to you, being a scientist and being a filmmaker has a lot more similarities than people might think.
Yeah.
Which to me very fits your films, because you've described them yourself as being more about the atmosphere. They lack a lot of dialogue, which feels like a very observant matter to make films in, which is also what you do as a scientist. I would say you observe and then present your findings.
Your question is a bit like, how does it influence my filmmaking, or?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say that for most of us, transition from biophysics to filmmaking might not seem like an obvious one.
No.
But to me, your filmmaking, it feels like it was maybe a necessary step in your path to become the filmmaker that you are now. Because to me, it felt very scientific, the way that you make your films, the way it's so observing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I find it really hard to... The observing thing I found really hard to observe myself about, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Like, I'm not there yet. Maybe after this conversation, I'll go home and be like, oh, I should have said that. But I definitely feel so what it feels like for me while I'm in the process is that I definitely feel I'm interacting with something outside of myself. Like, this film has its own personality and its own life and its own needs to kind of be finished. Like, and I have to discover them. You know?
Right, yeah.
So and in a way, when you're doing natural sciences, also nature is not going to always do what you want. So you can have an idea about like a natural process, and then you research it, and it just doesn't give the result you want. So you have to be creative to solve it, but also be open-minded, because if you're not open-minded, then you're never going to find the solution, because you're... So I feel that the kind of idea that people have about science is that it's very rigid. And I mean, the method is rigid, but the thinking around it that leads to answers is not. And it can't be, because the only way, just like with film, the only way you can be successful as a scientist is if you're like hyper original.
Yeah, very flexible.
Well, actually,
yeah.
maybe with film, that's even less important. I'm just trying to be original or whatever. But like a lot of people, I don't know. But with science, definitely, you need to be to survive, because the only thing that sets you apart from everybody else is maybe going to be an idea that nobody has had yet. You know. So in that sense, I think this open-mindedness is really important, and I definitely try to take that to film. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's very visible in your films, for sure. I'm interested in what you're saying about finding this sort of problem and thinking about it in a flexible, original way to find a solution. Is that also what you're trying to do in your films, to find a solution to the situation that you're presenting?
No, I'm more talking about filmmaking solutions. So maybe...
In producing the film, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good question. I'm not trying to find solutions for my characters.
No.
I like films that leave you with specific feeling, but you can't pinpoint a very clear morale or something, you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I think that means that you need... Yeah, that you can't really present like very clear solutions either, or look for them.
I mean, what you're saying, it really reminds me of your latest short, Eyes on the Road, where it's a very complicated situation that the characters are in. So it's a short film about 3 girls in a car that talk about something that happened in their surroundings. They all have very different opinions about it, and they speak about it with each other. And to me, what you're saying right now, I really recognize in that film, because in the end, there's not a solution to the problem. You don't make a statement about who's right or who's wrong. It's just the film just ends, and we're not a part of the conversation anymore, and you're left to think for yourself what to do with that information.
Yeah,
I would say. And I think the power of your films is really in its silence. Like you've said before, that your films lack dialogue, and then in Eyes on the Road,
there's actually quite a lot.
There's quite a lot of dialogue.
Yeah,
but it's still more about the things that are left unsaid, I think.
Yeah.
And the silence does a lot in creating this atmosphere in your films that all of them have so far. So. Yeah, what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, definitely. I guess that's a good example. That film is a good example of a moment where I felt it was not interesting to hint at who's right or who could be right, but also show a conversation that is being had, and how everybody is kind of navigating all these different feelings, sometimes opinions, while they're in the same space with other people.
Yeah, it's a different thing.
Yeah,
a difficult thing. I mean.
Yeah, I just think it's kind of moving. I mean, of course, I agree with some opinions that are said in that car more than with others, but I don't really need a film to tell me what to think, maybe.
Yeah.
Because I just like watching people struggle with with the complexities of life, and I find it moving, you know.
Right. That maybe comes from watching bleak films with your dad when you were
yeah, but I don't
small.
think it's actually so bleak. Yeah, that's also interesting. So I'm now in a phase, but I call it a phase because I think it's also a bit like, as a filmmaker, at some point you get a bit sick of your own thoughts, and then you try something else for a while.
Fair enough, yeah.
And I'm definitely now in a phase where I'm a bit sick of bleakness for the sake of it, or something meaningless bleakness or something. Like I feel it needs to be more intelligent if it's going to be bleak, you know.
All right, yeah.
And I definitely feel, for me, Eyes on the Road is not, but I guess you can take, it's an open-ended film on purpose, so I guess that people could also take something very sinister out of it, but for me it's not sinister, personally.
Yeah.
The film, and it's not saying something sad about these kind of interactions. For me, they're kind of part of life, you know. And also in my new film, I'm definitely touching on darker themes, but for me, they're not that dark, and I'm not really interested in proving how bad human beings are.
Yeah.
Just to get a pat on the back and being told you're a very special director, boy. Because I feel it was really like the realm of like last century European white male directors, where it was like the very amazing films have been made, but it became a bit like making a good film became a bit synonymous with showing that people are shitty.
Yeah.
Period, without any nuance or something.
Yeah.
You know. So.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I'm very curious then about your new film and how this all translated into it. Can you maybe tell us a bit about what it's gonna be about?
Yes. So I can tell you a bit about also how it started, because that's a bit part of the story. Because sometimes. I've had very different process. I don't always make films in the same way. Like Eyes on the Road, I just sat down with a glass of wine and I wrote most of the script in a night. Oh. But before that, I was working quite conceptually, you know, and building from an idea. Yeah. A bit more like a rational approach, if you will. And with this film, it was a bit different again, because I was... so I have a daughter, and I was at the time, was just before the pandemic. I was showing Eyes on the Road actually at London Film Festival, and I was breastfeeding my daughter and cutting back on it. So I was kind of ready to stop after a year. And I was at this film festival, and I thought, okay, so we're physically separated right now, so maybe this is a good. I was just thinking practically, maybe this is a good opportunity to kind of cut back on the pumping, and then get the breastfeeding to stop. Yeah. And until then, it had been quite an easy ride, this breastfeeding. So sometimes for some people, it's a tough journey, but actually for me, it had been quite of a practical, easy ride, and I never really had to think about my personal relationship with it, right? Yeah. And then in London, I was walking around. I had a great time, meeting a lot of really cool people, and in the mornings, I would be in the shower and like noticing that like less and less milk would come out of my breast. Like my body was forgetting this kind of ability. Yeah. And it was a really weird, this idea of like, my body losing this ability and somehow like irrationally made me really a bit panicky and sad. Like I was Googling like, oh, can I get it started again? But I didn't really want that. So I was a bit confused by myself, you know? And then I was reminded of my sister, who's a lot older than me. And when she was pregnant for the first time, unfortunately, it didn't go well, and she lost her baby at 26 weeks of pregnancy. Oh no! So pretty late. And at the time, I was a teenager, and I was like, "Oh, this is," you know, I understood it was like really sad, but it was quite abstract for me. Yeah. Because I was like 13 or something. Oh yeah, I understand that. Yeah. And but when I was walking around in London, I just was thinking about that again, and also that she mentioned that she had to tie her breasts so they wouldn't start producing milk, and that she had to, that this milk had stopped eventually. Yeah. And this character walked into my head, which is the main character of my film, Robin. And I just thought, what if you don't cut back and you keep pumping your milk after you lose your baby?
Yeah.
So the film is called Melk, and it's about Robin whose body starts producing milk after she loses her baby quite late stage of her pregnancy, and she decides not to throw away this milk, but that she wants to donate it. And the whole film is a kind of search for a place to donate her milk for a new home for her milk.
Yeah.
And when you're pumping, you have to pump every few hours. And in her specific case, it turns out this donation turns out to be a bit more complicated than she expected. So there's some reasons, partially bureaucratic, why it's difficult in her specific case. And she, in the meantime, her milk is just taking over her freezer and then her life. Wow. And in the beginning, people are very supportive. I spoke to quite a few people parents who have been grieving the loss of their baby. Mm-hmm. And people also treat you a little bit, sometimes, in some cases, with...
pity, maybe?
Well, een beetje fluwelen handschoentjes, how do you say that?
Like walking on eggshells?
Yeah, they don't really know what to say. Yeah. And when she brings up this plan to donate her milk, they're also a little bit relieved that they can contribute something very concrete. So they're all very supportive. But I think after a while, also I play a little bit with that, with the I think ideas that that we all have about how somebody should look who is grieving. I think after a while, also when you watch this film, you're going to ask yourself the question if this is something that's good for her, what she's doing.
Yeah.
And especially because nobody really says anything about it.
Yeah.
So I play at that quite consciously, although I don't really give the audience so much to form an opinion from. Yeah. Or I don't help them to feel a certain way about it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And I guess I shouldn't say how it finishes, this film, because
maybe
it would be nice if people go to see it.
Yeah.
But this is kind of the story that I'm telling, and I also immediately felt strongly how it should end and how it shouldn't. So for me, this story walked into my head. Not complete, but there was definitely already a kind of casco, a kind of skeleton and a drive, and this character was there, and I went back to the Netherlands and I talked to my screenwriter that I was working on another project with, Nena van Driel. I talked with her about this idea, and I thought, it's probably a short film. She said, no, you have to make a feature out of this. This should be a feature. So she kind of convinced me. And in the beginning, I was writing by myself because we really stayed in touch about she said, why don't you just start writing yourself and see how far you get? And then when you feel the time is ripe, then you can ask me. Okay. So I did exactly that. And it was a very special process. At some point, she joined. And then we continued writing as a team. And now the film is we're now doing the sound mix, and finishing the music, and going to send it to festivals, so.
All right, you're almost there.
Yeah, I'm almost there. It's really crazy.
Wow, what an incredibly interesting story. Does this happen in real life? Do people donate their breast milk?
Yeah, they do actually. I talked to 3 women who donated milk after losing their baby during pregnancy.
Yeah.
And one of them actually donated around 70 liters.
Whoa.
After her babies in this case, passed away.
Wow, that's so much.
Yeah, she lost two babies, twins.
Oh, that's tragic.
Yeah, it's really, really sad. But it's it's really amazing, and she can talk about it in a really, really beautiful way. Like she's a very white Dutch, down to earth lady.
Yeah. The very direct Dutchness. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure she would find it fine if I share her story, but I'll leave it a little bit abstract.
Yeah.
But she's like she has a job where she works with her hands, very crafty job, and she's very funny, and she did all that. She's a very practical person, actually. Like you don't really, very practical, very down to earth. It's not what as an outsider, the cliche of somebody who does something very irrational, which I guess it is. Like you're not doing it for yourself, this donation. It's something that you feel you need or that you need to do.
Yeah.
And for her it was really a given. Like it was never, oh, do I need to go on with this or not? That the fact that she was going to do that was a given, and everybody else was maybe struggling around her sometimes. But for her, it was, in that sense, very clear cut that she had to do that. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
So that is what you used to create the story in the film, the character in the film as well.
That aspect of it is a little bit there, that it's not a choice. But she's not based on this lady. I met a bunch of people. I did try, like, I do think, Robin's story is Robin's very specific story. It's not directly based on somebody, but of course, it's inspired by things I've talked about with people who have done this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that process of doing research before you write the film something that you've done now because it's a feature film, or did you do that for your short films as well?
Yes, to some extent I have with every film, but this was definitely the most elaborate. Also because I was very afraid to get it wrong.
Yeah.
Because, it's such a... When you talk to somebody who has been through such a thing once, it's so moving and sad and wonderful and admirable, and you just don't want to get it wrong,
Yeah.
So then you want to. Also because, and very often people who have been through something like this also have opinions about how something like this should be
of course.
depicted.
Yeah.
And I think that's very much true for parents who have lost a child during pregnancy.
Yeah.
I was definitely motivated to talk to get a few different opinions to see where everything was sitting, where everybody's feelings about certain things were sitting, and decide for myself what I would want to show in a film. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm also wondering about the decision to make it a feature film instead of a short.
Yeah,
because
that was Nena's idea.
Yeah. Do you know what made her say that? Why do you think it's a better format?
The question is it also a bit blunt, but is it enough for a feature film? Because you're going to have people watch 1.5, 2 hours of something.
Yeah.
And it has to be interesting enough, and it has to be powerful enough. And all of those things are definitely in this character and in the premise. But then you also have to tell a story arc.
Yeah.
And not every story arc is suitable for a long film. And I guess that because a search for a place to donate milk to, you can like approach it as in a kind of Dardenne way, where you're just following this character who's like walking around and, you know, with her milk, and like you can do that, which is kind of like the would be maybe the go-to format. Like, at least that's the first thing I thought of myself, you know? Mm-hmm. But then when Nena said this, I realized that I could also approach this in a different way, where it's much more, you don't really just get to see this walking around with a box of bottles, but you get to see all the moments in between. And I realized I was interested enough in all the characters around her and all the moments around the pumping milk, but also the pumping milk itself, like, because that's not really been shown in the film. And what's kind of cool is that it's there's a whole infrastructure around it in your life. Like, if you're pumping milk, especially if you're full-time pumping milk, which I've also done for a while, for my own baby, there's a whole practical infrastructure that comes around it, because you have to pump a lot, and you have the freezer, and you have to disinfect the pumping machine. And I found this an interesting and, again, very specific world to show to people that I would want to see myself in a film. So
yeah. All right. And so you've approached the storytelling different now because it's a feature film?
Yeah, that's interesting. Not so different, I think. In the end, I write very intuitively. I don't really like the story structures that you're told to use.
Yeah.
Probably there's some of that in my films anyway, because you all watch the same stuff, right?
Yeah.
But that's not at least how I approach the writing process.
Yeah. Do you think that we'll be seeing a difference in style because the format is different from your
not
previous?
Because the format is different, but because somehow every film that I make becomes a little bit different in style. Like, I mean, I guess if you compare Eyes on the Road to my previous shorts, it's also quite different.
It's also just growing as an artist, right? Yeah,
and also, as I said before, which is probably like a farce, it's probably not true, but I feel like this film is asking me to do a certain thing. So probably I'm still imposing my will or whatever, but it feels like I'm answering to the film's needs when I'm in the process, and I'm just finding out what's... I mean, there's some taste, of course, that's also consciously involved, like if... I don't know, the production designer or the composer lets me hear a few options. Of course, I'll think some things are cooler than others, you know. But overall, I definitely, I'm a bit driven by this idea that this film has a need or something.
Yeah.
Like a baby.
Like a baby, yeah. You said earlier that you feel like you might listen to other people more than other filmmakers do during the production process. Do you think that also comes from this need, because they are also part of that? Yeah,
like I kind of involve them. It's like co-parenting, maybe. This is so bad. Like, I definitely didn't want to position myself as this like parenting filmmaker or whatever. But like, no, it's a bit like that. Yeah, like I do want to choose what's best for the film.
Yeah.
So I ask, but I can't just ask anybody, you know. Like
no.
I ask people that I also feel have an interesting idea, or have a very specific, like, sometimes it's also nice to ask somebody where you know what their opinion about other stuff is, because you know that, for example, your classmates, you've known them for really long, and you've seen them in so many discussions, and then when they say something about your film, then you're like, now I understand what I'm making.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Because I mean, I think I can safely say this because I think it's true for not just me with a busy mind and ADHD and everything, but for everybody a little bit, that when you're so consumed in a feature film, it's hard to really zoom out and really understand what animal you're creating, you know?
Yeah.
You kind of know the elements, of course. Like, I know there's a bit of humor in my film. I know it's also sad. But, like, when somebody then tells you something specific, like, whoa, there was like I felt she was going to do this until the end or something. Like, you know, there's stuff that you put in your film that you're not aware of.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's also, I like that as a scientist a lot, because it's you're just influencing people's perception, and you're playing with people's relationship to something, right? And that's also really cool. It's cool that you're not completely in control, I think. Yeah.
That's really interesting. Yeah. I'm very excited to see this film when you finish it.
Yeah, it's I'm proud of it. I hope it's gonna find a home.
Yeah.
And people are going to watch it. That would be nice.
That would be very nice. Well, we'll definitely try to get people to watch it. We'll send them all. Well, you're going to send it to festivals, right? So,
yeah.
Because all your previous films premiered at Locarno, all of them, right? Except for the Hande, maybe?
Yeah, Hande didn't have much of a festival life. It was my third year film in the Film Academy. But all the ones after that did.
So hopefully Melk gets a start there as well, or would you be more interested in different festivals?
I mean, I would definitely be happy for Locarno to show my film again. But there's also it's a new team now, so it's not the same festival that it used to be anymore.
And it's a feature as well, so that's always different.
Yeah, yeah, we'll see who picks it up.
Yeah,
we're sending it to all the best festivals. Yeah. So.
All right. So maybe a question to finish it off with. Now that you've worked, now that we know that you work with so many different people on your films as well, I wonder what the best advice is that someone has ever given you. When it comes to filmmaking. Or maybe not when it comes to filmmaking.
Again, it looks really like I picked this because it's like so, how do you say that? Verantwoord.
Responsible?
Yeah, it's like a responsible answer or something, but it's literally the first thing that comes to mind. So I was in a master class in Berlin a few years ago, and there was Appie Chapong was giving a master class there, and I liked that master class. I liked everything that came out of his mouth. So I was like, I wanted to just. It was during the pandemic, so I had almost the feeling I wanted to just push on pause and just write down everything he said. But I could rewatch it later. But one thing that he said and that gave me permission to do something was, he said, it's okay to build your relationship with your film. So, of course, filmmaking has a bit of a narcissistic side to it, and I think a lot of us filmmakers are a bit afraid. I mean, I'm definitely afraid of that I make something just for myself, you know?
Yeah.
And that my film is too personal and not universal enough or something. And he said, when I make films, I just like to put like a frame on the wall in the room that we're filming that is like a photo of my mother. And then I get the curtains from my old home and I put them up. So I try to infuse this film with all kinds of little personal details that build my relationship with the film. And I was like, whoa, okay. And I thought this was so nice because, it's just, Yeah, it gave me a little bit of permission to have a personal relationship with my film and not have it, but actually feel a bit guilty about it or something.
Yeah.
And sometimes just pick a color scheme that you're presented with by your, I don't know, production designer, or in a conversation, just do something because you like it. And do something because it moves you, even if you can't really justify it. I liked that a lot. So maybe that will be the one advice that comes to mind.
And have you done that so far in your films?
I definitely did it. That was on time for Melk, so I definitely did it in Melk.
Right. Okay.
But I think I kind of did it before a little bit as well. But I felt more guilty about it. But definitely, I've embraced it more.
Yeah. So in Melk, we can expect to see some of your home curtains.
Yeah, definitely. It's set in my hometown. They speak. I got the actress to take Nijmegen, like a local accent. She's very good at it, I have to say.
Wow.
And we got all the doctors and nurses and all the medical personnel. So we work with a lot of non-professional actors in the film. A lot of the people who have medical roles or healthcare roles, they're people that actually do that job. And a lot of them are from that area as well.
Oh, nice.
We shot partially in the woods where I would walk my dog when I still lived in Nijmegen. So definitely there's some personal relationship in that sense. And I think also I put a bit of myself in a lot of the characters. And I felt a bit less like I had to hide that or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here today. It was a joy to talk with you and to talk about your films. Can't wait to get to see them.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Celebrating Cinema series, Future Frames. Make sure to listen to the rest of the crew's conversations. We'll be releasing one episode of Future Frames every week during March and April. Please leave a review on whichever platform you listen on and share so more people can discover both us and our future frame makers. Feel free to send any questions and suggestions to celebratingcinema@lab111.nl and follow us at lab111 on Instagram. As always, we provide show notes, including all films mentioned and links to the filmmaker's work at celebratingcinema.com. This was a Lab 111 production, edited and produced by Elliot Bloom and Yvonne GC, with music from Hugo Emmerzaal and artwork by Studio FFF. Thank you.